Hey folks, we're live. This is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to the program. This is the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Go on over and see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. You can also see all the places where you can find this show and listen to it. It's scheduled several times throughout the day. So tomorrow you would hear, well, not this show, one caveat here, because we are living in the makeshift studio, in the makeshift lifestyle down here in makeshift Louisiana. We are not broadcasting live to Odyssey Radio for the time being. Took a little hiatus from the live show, and we're focusing on the radio show. We're focusing on the live stream. For those of you who may not have been here in the past, and this is your first time coming here, you can go over, though. They've got over 500 shows archived over at Odyssey of the Intrepid radio program. And they're replaying some of those right now until we get this studio a bit more reestablished down here in Louisiana. And so go on over. They're playing something different than this show tonight, this episode, and you can hear it all throughout the day at different times. Just check out their schedule. And of course, anybody who will be hearing this show in archive later, if you're not finding it the YouTube channel, you're just go over to the YouTube channel. You can watch again over 500 archived shows. And that's at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. I want to say greetings to those who are showing up in the chat room. Carl Mulek. Carl, you know me. I know it's Mulek. I sometimes just spit it out wrong. So welcome. Carl's a very dear friend of mine, and you can come on over and talk to Carl. You can check Carl's Facebook out. I met Carl doing reenacting and the Renaissance festivals, doing historical living history. So he is a great friend of mine, and so welcome Carl to the show. He's here every now and then. Master Finn is here. Matt Finn. Good to see you, Master Finn. I see you've taken her out in style tonight. And so everybody, Captain says, climb the mizzen mast. And I says, how can I climb it if it's mizzen? And that is where Matt Finn, he's my first mate, if you will, on this little excursion tonight. Steve Clark, welcome. Good to see you. Siani Reese, good to see you as well. Glad to have you in here tonight. Let's see what we got. Who all's here? Susie Q. Good to see you here, Susie Q. And let's see who else we got. I just want to say I can do this. We can be a little less formal in the live stream over on YouTube when we're not broadcasting on radio. We're not, again, if you're new to the program, we're set to rigid timelines over there. We got a 25-minute first segment, 28.5-minute second segment, and we're done. And all the ads in between and so on. Over here, when we're just broadcasting live, we've got a little more leeway. We can play with the time a little bit. And you know what? Tonight's a great show coming. And so we may go overtime. So if you're here now and you want to hear more of the show, you can stick around because I think we're going to go overtime. And I have my very dear friend and brother. I call him Misu. And he'll explain to you what that means. You may have seen that over on my Facebook channel. That's Lakota, and he'll tell you what that means. And Reuben is going to come in a few minutes with us, and we're going to talk about everything Reuben FastHorse, and we're going to get his take on some things as well. And I think that you're going to really enjoy the show tonight. Beth Kirkham, good to see you. Glad to have you here. And who else is here? Maya is here. Excuse me. I was just telling Reuben off air, I said I sometimes get a little coughing jag going on, and I gotta have my water. So I want to welcome you all to the show tonight. We're going to have some of our, what I would call our typical conversation with Reuben FastHorse, which is never typical, but we want to talk about some heritage things, about Lakota language, about a little bit about what Reuben does, but I want to get his take on other things. I was in an online conversation tonight, and this is very impromptu. We may want to talk about the issue where some people were talking about how women are afraid of men nowadays. I want to ask you in the chat room, those of you listening who are women, do you find men something to be feared? And this is the current culture of the day, it seems, that because men have committed atrocities against women, men beat women, men have subjugated women for thousands of years. Does that make all men something that women should be afraid of? And I want to represent this case well. So I have a particular take on that. And I said, I haven't seen a lot of women in my experience that are afraid of men in the sense of what's being said. So we'll see. We'll have a conversation with Reuben about that too tonight and get his take on that because he has a very unique cultural heritage take on that issue. Hey, Field Guy, good to see you. And folks, again, if you are here for the first time and watching this live stream, this is we have wonky internet down here, and I got to tell you, I haven't got private internet hooked up. We're living in a camper. That's why I call this my makeshift studio and my makeshift life in my makeshift camper down here in Louisiana. And we're trying to get internet hooked up here to our singularly to our camper. Right now, we're just going off the internet that is available here at the campground. And so if you see us phase in and phase out, don't go away because it's usually something that passes in 10 seconds to 60 seconds, however long it takes, but we're always back. The screen may turn black and you'll see the little spinning circle, but you know what you won't see? All these headers will still be here. You just won't be able to see the picture of the show. So there's my ticker, by the way, which I'd forgotten to turn on, and now it's on. And so there's a bit of informality in these live shows, even more so on Sundays when we do the Sunday morning show. It's Sunday. And by the way, I'm actually going to be able to bring in my lovely, exuberant, wonderful, amazing wife, Rainey, on Sunday, the way you're going to see us bringing in Reuben tonight in just a minute or so. And so, Elder Barry, good to see you. Hold on, I got somebody knocking at my door. Come on in. I'm on radio, guys, so I can't talk right now. So let me call in my friend Reuben FastHorse. I'll give you just a little bit of background about Reuben. Reuben is Native American. You can, if you can't tell by the name FastHorse, he's Lakota Sioux, and he grew up between the Red Rock Reservation, I think it's the Red Rock, Standing Rock Reservation, and the Pine Ridge Reservation up in the Dakotas. And some of you know him, you've seen him here before, and I'm going to bring him in live right now. So let's add him to the stream. Reuben, how you doing, Misu?
Ho, ho, dokashka ya uho. Daya ya hippie kihele. Lecha wana woglaking de locha. And now come to kapo. It's great that you're here. And cheers, Scotty, my older brother, Scotty.
Yes.
I'm going to adopt him. And,
yes, he is.
And
do you
Sam.
remember the name that you've given me? And I try to pronounce it right. Maybe you can pronounce it better for the folks. Wawohe, no, Waho. Hang on.
Wahota.
Wahokea, Wagakea. Wagakea is the name. Does that sound right?
English. In English, it means.
You say it. I always feel very.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Just say it, and I'll translate it.
Reuben said that means, roughly translated, and I've mentioned it a couple of times on the show. It means higher wisdom or knowledge, something like that. Wahokea gagakea.
Wahokea, old knowledge above us. Old knowledge above us. That's what that means. So So I'm here because I love my brother and to share a little bit about any questions you may have, but also about the state of knowledge.
See, there we go.
Not just that,
We're
but
getting
also
a little wonkiness with the internet. So
so I'll talk slow.
that's all right.
The state of the knowledge of our country, and Native Americans have always never felt acknowledged, even with Obama or Nixon or Kennedy. We never had that knowledge. No president has ever said, I'm sorry. The PM of Canada, the Vatican, the Pope has said, I am sorry. But this country has never done that to Native Americans.
I'll tell you something, Reuben. I have always been one. I bristled at Obama's what we used to call the Obama America Apologizes tour that he took in his first year in office. And I thought, you're apologizing for things that we can't control. It's outside of our realm of influence. We weren't there to commit the atrocities that you're, or the misdeeds that you might be apologizing for America for. Our ancestors have done some wildly wicked things. And I got to tell you, though, my tune changed a bit on that topic altogether when I did that lengthy 7-week series. It was every night. So it's 35 to 40 programs we did on the conquering of the American West. And that was about a year ago we had done that. And the Native American perspective of the taking of the American West by the United States of America. And I have found that while I was not there, there's none of you weren't there. I wasn't there. My ancestors, some of them may have been there. My white American, and I hate to put that way because I'm not trying to divide it out by racial, or be racial about it.
No, you're not. You're not.
My ancestors are Welsh and Scott. They settled here in 1710 in Virginia. And so my family has been here for the duration of the United States. You could call me not an indigenous person, but you could call me Native American by virtue of the fact that my family's always been here in America. And so I was born here, so I am native to this land.
You're right.
While not an indigenous person. So I have to get some of that political stuff out of the way. I changed my tune a bit when I learned more and researched more, saw more about what happened to the Native American peoples here in America, as America came in and systematically subjugated them, killed them, murdered them, tried to wipe them off the face of the map. There were even some leaders that said we must wipe them off the face of the map. And so you and I have talked about this many times. I've talked about this on the show many times. For you, it's a thing of your heritage. It's a thing that you can look back on and say, this happened to my people. For me, I look back and I say, my people my people did this to your people. Although there were people, my ancestors, that stood with your people. So there were both sides of that, but systematically, corporately, on a nationwide level, this is the position we took. And so everybody out there knows it. They all have heard me talk about it before. They've heard you talk about it before. You and I have talked about it many times. So all of that to say, would I, if I were the leader of the United States, while I loathed the Obama apology tour, Would I apologize to the native peoples? I would not apologize personally as if I had done something. I might corporately say, issue an apology and say, this is what happened at the hands of my ancestors to your ancestors. And I apologize for that. Does that mean, and I'll be very honest with you, does that mean I'd say, here's my house, take my land and my house back? That would be an ultimate act of altruism. And I think probably improper because we all live in the here and the now. This is where we are now. That does not mean
Scotty,
I can. Yes.
I'm going to stop you right here.
All right.
Stop you right here because you weren't there and I wasn't there. And so we have to do what we can do. Sitting Bull said, my chief, let's put our minds together
Yes.
and see what we can do for our children. And that's it right there.
There it is.
I've been through. Yeah, I've been through what you've been through. I've been through what I've been through. It's hard. Life does what life does. So you go on, you try, you deal with it. And everything you said sounds really, you feel guilty, but don't.
Yes.
Don't feel guilty. Don't. Let's deal with now. Because if you went into a village and people ask me all the time, oh, how long have the Indians been here? Beyond immigrants, migrants. The native people came here 12,000 years ago, according to carbon dating, through the four lands of Anchorage to Alaska, for ice ages. And they followed the animals. Now they're here and not, when I was born, Scotty, on my backside, behind my butt bone, I had a Mongolian spot, which is a bruise. It looks like a bruise, and the hospital thought, oh, she's abusing her child. No, that's from being born, or the remnants of being in Mongolia.
Yes.
Nobody has that. Nobody has that. So, in saying that, to say this, not all Native Americans are born in this country. Some are born here. Mm-hmm. I wasn't. My tribe, my Native American tribe, is related to Mongolia. I would say that scientifically.
Yes.
But it took four ice ages to get us here. And I did dances in America here. And then I met a Mongolian guy. He said, you dance just like my cousin. I said, you look like my cousin. He said, you look like my cousin. And it's true. We're not Chinese, we're not Japanese, but Mongolian.
You know what's interesting?
Horse culture. Go ahead.
I saw, there's a man who does a television show for National Geographic. I think his name is Lynn is his last name, Lyn, I believe, and it's Albert Lynn. He seems like a young man, or he's a 40-year-old man who looks like a 25-year-old. He's missing one of his legs from the knee down. He's got an artificial leg and foot. But he is an explorer and a traveler and a scientific investigator, a scientific archaeologist. And what was very interesting, the point I'm making with him, you can go look him up, Albert Lynn. He looks like you with short hair. And he is, I said to Rainey, I said, this man is Asian, but I would swear he was Native American. by the way he looks. And I said, look how much he looks like. He even has your mannerisms. He laughs like you. He acts. And I just think that that's anecdotal. I wanted to throw that in there because you're talking about the Asian connection there. And here's an Asian man who I think looks just like you, comes across looking very Native American. So that's neither here nor there. There's nothing to be learned from that.
I agree. It's that whole thing. And it's funny you say that because I think all white people look like you. You know, if you walk
we all look the same.
Yeah, I know. If you walked into a crowd in New York City, I'd lose you.
There you go. Where is he? He's a I can only describe him this way. He's a white guy, and he looks like he has a white face and white eyes. And
if you were in Scotland and Ireland or England, you'd be gone. I wouldn't say like, where's Scotty? Where's Scott?
I'd blend right in. I didn't mean to distract you from the more important points you're making. So.
No, that's great. It's great that you bring that up. That we all lose ourselves in the audience of life, but our heart is there. And I love you, and you're a great man.
I love you with all my heart. You are. We didn't describe what it means when I call you Misu.
Yeah. Matt Finn just put, my Irish ancestors were hated when they came, working mostly in the mines and brotherhood. We never had any privilege, just pride in the hard day's labor. That's true. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. For sharing that. And it's true.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say, how do we wrap this all together neatly for the sake of a shorter conversation here? How do we wrap this together and say, how should we act? You already kind of mentioned it in mentioning what Sitting Bull said, but how should we act? How should we be contrite in the presence of Native Americans because of what our ancestors did? Should we be I tend to take the tack almost like Sitting Bull said. I'm saying, look, we live in the here and the now. The important thing for us is to remember our history, to learn the lessons from it, to grieve the things that sadden us about it, the atrocities that took place, but at the same time to say we need to recognize that we are here now, and the best thing that we have now is to come together and work together and join together to make a better world and a better relationship between us and Native America. Like you and I have. We disagree politically, as we're fond of saying, but I love you. You're my brother, and I would have it no other way. I would support you. I would die for you. Maybe much to the chagrin of my children, who love you too. They said, I don't want my dad to die for anybody. But you know what I mean. I'm using it as cliche almost. So I wasn't taking that anywhere in particular other than to recognize that this is where I stand on this stuff now.
I think it's like Sitting Bull said, but it's also just day by day. It's going through, I'm in New York, you're in Wisconsin, and people are around the world. And it's good to hear. It's good to hear us speak. I'm Native American, you're Scottish. I got friends. And you're Wisconsin, I can say it right. Wisconsin. Bubbler. And
yes.
And I've lived there, and I know the Native people there, and the whole point is just being able to come together like this,
Yes.
And it's not easy. It's not easy, but we do it, and we've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Scotty came to me and said, can you be our Indian scout? And I said, yeah.
This is for a reenacting thing, folks. A living history, reenacting battles of the French and Indian War. And we were the Scottish regiment, of course. And we talked to Reuben to come with us and be our scout. We had several Native American guys that were working as scouts in our, and that's how we actually first really started interacting. So,
and he put me in a kilt.
Yes.
And today, every summer, I still wear a kilt. I wear an industrial kilt. It's free.
Yes.
I'm regimental. So
a utility kilt. Yes. Well, what's a Scotsman wear beneath his kilt? Why, his socks and shoes, of course. There you go.
And then I quote you. I quote you in saying, "Oh, that's a skirt." I say, "Only if it's I have my heels on."
Yeah, it's a skirt only if I'm wearing my heels.
So he's my big brother, and I love him to death, and his family, and oh God, I'm 50, and here we are. So
yes. By the way, folks, yesterday was Reuben's birthday. He is now part of the official Old Man's Club. And so he was my little brother, my Misu. I, his older brother, his Chia. Is that how you say Chia?
Chia.
Chia. And so now he is part of the Old Man Little Brother Club. So, there you go.
So
I want to put something up here because I want you to give your opinion on this. Maya in the chat room says, that's why I have a problem with this conversation. Americans cannot hold this conversation with the African American person because the history is too painful to deal with. See, now, Maya, I only put this up because I'd like to get Reuben's take on that statement. Not to point you out other than to say, let's talk about what you said. I find that there are painful things in my own memory. And we're going to talk about some of this stuff a little bit tonight. There are painful things in my past, abuses in my past, things of that nature. But when I go into somebody else's past, I can't feel the same thing. You say Americans can't hold this conversation with the African American person because that history is too painful to deal with. I think we can have those conversations. If you say my history is one that I've been in, my people were enslaved by you, by your people. Reuben could say my people were tortured, were mutilated, were murdered en masse by your people, speaking to me. That's the truth. But are he and I unable to have a conversation with each other because our ancestors did something that we wouldn't do today, that we disapprove of in retrospect? The beauty of being able to have the conversation, I believe, is being able to say, this happened to our ancestors, but this isn't where we are now. This isn't who we are. That doesn't define us. Reuben, what are your thoughts on that?
Very good question, Scotty.
Did you catch all of them?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. It's, I've had black people, and I've had black friends in college that say to me, you and me in the same boat. You and me in the same boat. I say, no, we're far from it. This U.S. Constitution does not see the Native American as equal. They see us as a savage. They still write it, and it is. You look at the U.S. Constitution, you'll see the savage. The black man always wanted to be American. The Native American never wanted to be American. And
right.
It's Malcolm X in the 60s did an interview. Malcolm X said, the black man, this U.S. government sees the American as a domesticated animal, like a cow, a pig, whatever domesticated, and then saw the Native American as a wild animal. But the wild animal had land, resources, minerals, timber, all these things. He never wanted to be. And that's our people. Our people never wanted to be American. We are the original Americans before you were Native American.
Yes.
And Native American is a term, say American Indian. Oh, I'd correct teachers. And I spoke to 3,000 schools from New York to LA, Seattle to Florida. And I spoke to every school, college, middle school, high school. And I told them, you can say American Indian. American Indian is fine. American Indian comes from the word indios, which is Latin. Indios means of God, children of God. That's not a bad term. Native American is a term given to us by Congress in the last 60 years. Congress says if you're Athabascan, Aleut, Inuit, Yupik, Samoan, you're Native American. If you're enrolled, like I am, to a tribe, you're Native American. If you're born in this country, your little toe has some Native American, you're Native American. And that's such a diluted term. So it dilutes us. And I'm the only person, I should show you, but I'm not gonna right now, but oh hell, I will.
Okay.
My card. I have a Native American card that proves that I am Native American. And that's a sad part. That's a real sad part. Okay.
Let's see what you got.
You don't have this for Black people. You don't have them for Latinos. You don't have them for white people. It's only Native Americans.
Now, this is a card issued by who? The federal government?
Yep.
Let's see that. There it is. Oh, upside down. There you are. Tell us what that says.
Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. And it has my picture and my enrollment number.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about tattooing it on my arm, just like the Nazis did to the Jews. And my girlfriend's Jewish.
Now, is this legal? Is this something you have to do? It's mandatory?
It is, to prove who I am. I'm the only person that has to prove that I am Native American.
So
height, weight, eyes.
Yep.
Crazy.
Now,
let me ask you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Why would America make that prevalent in our lives? I mean, we're the real people. We're the original people. Yet we have to carry a card that proves who we are. I don't get it.
Well, let me ask you too. Is this something that has anything to do with supposedly, according to treaty rights and so on, that Native American tribes are supposed to be, they're under the federal government, but they are also sovereign tribes. Now, go ahead.
No, you're right. Sovereign nations, a reservation is a sovereign nation, Scotty, in a sovereign nation. Yet we are so dependent. And because our treaties, the treaties that we gave up our lands and our place to the U.S. government has never honored it. The U.S. government, we're the only people that has ever made a treaty that they dishonored. They made so many treaties that they broke every treaty. Yet we're the only people to defeat the U.S. military at the Battle of the Bighorn, and the Seminole people defeated in Florida because they fought in the swamplands the U.S. government. No other government has ever defeated the U.S. government military except the native people of this land. So when I think in this way, this government, like Rome and like China, a dynasty will fall, the empire will fall from inside.
Okay.
And we're almost at that place, you know.
Here, let me interrupt something here because there's some conversation going on in the chat room. And Maya, you've made some points. I'm not pointing out that you've made points for any negative reason, but I want to understand where you're coming from. You said, and I'm going to throw your post up here. You said, I'm making a copy of this conversation so the boards that I'm sitting on can look at this and see that the attitudes here are not what most honor or believe in or believe on. And you said you sit on a couple of Native American boards, Maya. I'm missing some of the in-between conversation that's going on, so I'm not sure what all is happening. What you're finding objectionable in, are you talking about the conversation Reuben and I are having, or are you talking about the conversation in the chat room? I'm curious to know what you're thinking and what your thinking is on this. This will be the last time on this board, so don't worry about me being a problem here. I think you're here. I certainly hope you don't take a singular conversation that's going on in this chat room and say, I'm gonna kick all the dust off my feet and never show up here again. Well, help us understand what you're thinking, what you feel. That's what we're here for, is to learn some things. And that's why I have Reuben here, to learn things from Reuben, from his perspective. So I have a hard time respecting an opinion that says, I'm not going to work through this with you. I'm going to have some hostility toward how you're saying what you're saying, and I'm going to exit. That's okay. If you want to take this broadcast in this chat room and show it at your meetings, please do. I would love to talk with some people that maybe represent your point of view and something that you're because you're not being a problem. Carl Mulak just said that. You're not being a problem. You're just stating your case. I hope you're still here and you're hearing this. And Reuben, what's your take on this? Is it? I haven't seen all the conversation going on back and forth over there, and I would hope that nobody's just being flippant with Maya and not being serious about the way you're talking. I don't want to see comments in the chat room that are meant to be stupidly funny or stupidly comic. I want people to rather than think through what they're saying. Everybody tries to make a comedy out of something. Everybody, a few people do that. And you can't always do that. So I want you to be able to be here and express what you want to express. And Maya, I'd be willing to bring you into the program if you would like to talk with us about it. But let's go with Reuben. Reuben, what's your take on that? If you've noticed the things that have going on.
I welcome everything because it awakes consciousness, and when you expand consciousness, you cannot unexpand it. It just
Right.
blows up. So it's good to hear other people's ideas, debates, all these things. And I love your program because that's exactly what it does. It just lets people be open and awaken. That's the word right there. Awaken consciousness. And so we're all going to share. We're all going to talk. It's not just Black Lives Matter. It's all lives matter. And I love Biden and Kamala Harris because they say every time Black, Latino, and Native American. And we're never recognized. And so it's good to hear in that way. Just to be recognized says a lot for us as Native Americans. Yeah. We're the minority of the minority of the minority. So
yes,
I'm out here in New York and reaching out to the Lenape and the Delaware and the Haudenosaunee and the Native American. I've been teaching in New York for 6 years as a Lakota teacher, and they're excited because they're like, wow, if a Lakota guy from South Dakota, North Dakota can teach here in Greenwich Village, why can't we? And so it's kind of stirred the pot. It stirred the pot to where they're wanting to say, let's stand up and do this. I think that's, I always say this to my brothers. So many times I should have died, Scotty. I should have died.
Sure.
But grandfather, Tunkashila is not done with me.
Right.
The grandfather is not done with me. So he wants me to do what I have to do. And you could say the same thing about yourself.
I could.
You're not done. You're not done here. Your job's not done here.
No,
Scotty.
I'm not done. Carry on, my wayward son. You'll have peace when you are done. Lay to rest your weary head. Don't cry no
more. That's it.
There's a question up here. Sean Bowden, I put it up on the screen. He said, may I ask Reuben a question? There's your question. Thanks, Sean. No, I'm kidding. I found an eagle feather in my yard. Is it legal for me to keep it?
I'm not going to say no. Legally, no, you're not.
Legally, no.
Legally, no. But I'm not going to say boo, and I'm sure Scotty's not going to say boo.
No, I'm not going to tell
anybody. It's a good thing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. So.
And I believe Native American tribes, or is it certain tribes, are the only ones who can actually legally own an eagle feather because it's part of religious practice, is it not? Is that the reason why?
You're right, Scotty. You're right. And so it is. But I'm not going to say boo, and he's not going to say boo. So if you want to keep it, just don't share it. But pray with it every day. That's really good.
There you are, Sean Bowden. Pray with it every day. Matt Finn says, this is why these animosities, they'll last in perpetuity because each generation will continue to hold the other side accountable for the past. It's like, I'm trying to think of a simpler example, but I wouldn't want to be held accountable for something that my great-great-grandfather did.
No, you're not. You're not. I'm going to stop you right there, Scotty, because I wasn't there, like you said before.
Yeah.
You weren't there.
And neither would you, by the way.
So you do the best you can at the moment.
That's like, here's a for instance. One of my great-great-great-great grandfathers, mid 1800s, owned slaves, black slaves. And he willed them. I've got a copy of his will as I was doing all my genealogical research. He willed them to his descendants. Now I don't know what happened to the slaves after that. There were only two of them that he owned. It wasn't like he had a plantation that he was willing. It was two of his black slaves, and he mentions them by first name only in his will. And then they drop off the historical record of my family. So when I look at that, somebody said, "Oh, don't you feel horrible about that? Wouldn't you apologize?" I said, I feel bad that my ancestors owned slaves. I said, but I don't apologize for them. I wasn't there. It wasn't me who did that. It was an ancestor who did that. And so I think that this is the raging debate that's been going on over China. We hold ourselves accountable. Should I be held accountable for something my ancestors did 150 years ago? Maya says this. I think this is in response to what I just said. Okay, brother. Oh, brother. I don't know if you're addressing me as brother or saying, "Oh, brother," and rolling your eyes. Black people had slaves in the U.S. as well. It's a conversation that too many people use to justify their change of mind as enlightened. Change the narrative. I am in full agreement with what you just said, Maya. We changed the narrative. The narrative is no longer us against it. The narrative is how do we come together? Reuben.
Maya, you have to know that before there were slaves that came to this country, there were Native American slaves. The Carib, which is blended into the African tribes that came, because the African people came and they blended in with the Native American Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, all these tribes,
Yes.
They blended in. And the Carib no longer exists. Now they only exist through the African nations. And so Americans that made the Caribs from the Caribbean extinct. But those that did survive lived through the African nations, slaves that came.
Yes.
So you really don't know the history until you look into it and realize this country, it's a great country and I love America, but it's based on genocide. It yes. Always extinguished. And when the people came, sometimes they walked into a Mohawk tribe or a Carib tribe and disease killed them first. When the European boot hit the ground, it brought disease, and the disease wiped us out. So they walked into ghost tribes, and then became part of that nation. So, you really got to know the history. You got to really look into it. But that's a sad part of American history is that, we had the Big Bang Theory, then we had the dinosaurs, and then we had the Civil War, we had the Indian and White Wars, and then we had Civil War, and then we had World War I, World War II. It just...
Yes. Let me ask you something. You as a Lakota who grew up on the reservation, are you, and I'm not just it's not just an ignorant question. It's a question I want to get a really pointed answer on because I've never really asked this before. You are a member of a sovereign nation. You grew up on the reservation. You have your bloodline. You have your card telling you you're part of a sovereign nation. At the same time, are you considered a fully 100% American citizen, United States citizen?
That's a good question. No, I'm 23rd, 3/5. And when you look at our cards, there's two ways of knowing an Indian. On the Pine Ridge, where I grew up, and as a child, where I grew up, I'm an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, Sitting Bull's people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But on the Pine Ridge, they do lineage. If you can prove your lineage, just like a Cherokee, if you can prove your lineage, they'll make you a member. But if you're on Standing Rock, then Standing Rock says you got to be a 25% Native American. Yet, if I married a Navajo woman who's full blood and we had a child, then that child is now recognized as a full blood Indian, half Navajo and half Sioux, Lakota. So that's the difference. You know, things have changed, but the reason why the government did that was to dilute us, because like Malcolm X said, the black man is seen as a domesticated animal and the Native American is seen as a wild animal, but the wild animal has land, timber, minerals, resources, water, and all that. And so the more they diluted us by our blood quantum, then they can eradicate us.
Sure.
In that way. You know, I'm not being mean, Scotty, to you, your people, or anything. It's just,
I don't feel that.
Yeah. Thank you. I love you. You're my brother, and I'm gonna adopt you. But it's this government that still sees the Native American as a, oh God, they can't even call us humans. They call us savages still. And that's a difference between Latino, Black, Asian, you know, all the terrible things.
Now, let me ask you, have you run into any official paperwork that's contemporary, that's nowadays, that refers to you in the term savage? Or are you talking about the founders of the country, the Constitution, and all of this?
Just the Constitution.
Okay.
I'm not come across it technically, but I don't know why they don't change it. Why don't they change it? You know?
Right.
We're the original people of this country. Let's change it. Let's change it.
Yeah.
For God's sake, you know.
I am a lover of history. I'm a researcher of history. To me, history is amoral. There is no morality to it. History is facts. History is what it is. You can talk about an atrocity committed, an atrocity received. Both of those are historical facts without moral to it. The morals are what we ascribe to the telling, the feelings behind the stories, the things that happen to people. Those are all, that's where we dig into those things. And so history being moral, it's the retelling of events that took place and the people who experienced them. And so I look at all of this and I say, we all have the ability in the here and the now, 2021, to say, I can look at the past and I can move the past and keep it where it is. It's the past. But what about those who, maybe this is where Maya is coming from, maybe you've experienced some of this. What do you feel now? Do you have, let me ask, I'm just going to be pointed about it. Do you have grievances now that are current grievances? Do you look at the past and say, those are hurtful things, but I've moved on? But do you find that your people now, your Native American tribe, that there are grievances even now?
Yes. To answer that very quickly, that's why we have rides like the Wounded Knee ride.
Yes.
We ride horseback from Standing Rock, my reservation, down to Pine Ridge, where I grew up. And it's in January 15th, and it's cold as ice. But they rode because the people rode. 1890, Sitting Bull was killed, and the people were scared, so they came down.
Yes.
The Hunkpapcha, my people, Hunkpapcha, that rode in the dark, and the Minikonju Sioux, we're all Sioux, we're all Lakota. Hunkpapcha means those that camp at the end of the horn,
Okay.
at the tip of the horn. And Minikonju means those that camp at the plant. They plant at the water's edge. They picked them up and they went down to Pine Ridge, the poorest place in the country where I grew up, down to Wounded Knee.
Right.
And
Yes.
they came down and they were killed and shot and buried in a mass grave. So they do a ride every winter from Standing Rock down to Pine Ridge to honor them. And that's grieving. It's just a grieving process. It's multi-generational grieving. We still remember that time when our people died. And I've been there many, many times as a tour guide and bring people there to share and talk about it. So it's a hard thing. It's like Sand Creek among the Cheyenne, Black Kettle.
Black Kettle.
It's like the Irish.
Where
every story you hear about the Irish is sad. And then every Lakota story you hear is sad. Every Scottish story is sad. It doesn't end well.
It's like the joke that says, you've heard about the Irish boomerang? You throw it out and it sings sad songs about coming home again. There you go. I feel you mentioned Sand Creek, and I wanted to bring up something that may not elicit much response, but as a white guy in this country, I got no problems being a white guy. I'm very proud of my Celtic heritage, which goes way back, and obviously. And but at the same time, I started researching, as you know, and everybody on the show knows, researching Native American culture years ago, before I had even met you 20 years ago. And I wanted to understand things from the different perspective. Why was it not the winning of the American West was the way we were taught in school, when in actuality it was the conquering of the American West? So something as simple as that, and understanding that, was something I acquired not in school, but I had to teach myself. I had to learn, why would it be called that? Why is that way? And so the same with I've lost my train of thought on that, so I'm gonna move on from that because I don't want to belabor that point. It'll come to me when you're saying something totally unrelated, so as it usually does. So I grew up. Remember the post I put up a couple of weeks ago? This is what I wanted to mention. I put up a post that showed an old engraving from an 1800s newspaper, and it was all about the Sand Creek Massacre. And I said, at the Sand Creek Massacre, this is where General George Armstrong Custer of the 7th Cavalry, the United States Army, mounted his regiment, and they rode in through the snow and attacked Black Kettle's peaceful village. And I had made mention of the way I started the post was to say the tune Gary Owen, which is an old, you associate that with the cut no, you see, now I've always heard that it's been this jaunty tune associated with some of the cavalry regiments until I found that this is a tune that was adopted by the 7th Regiment, which was Custer's regiment. And the morning that they stormed in through the snow and the mist at Sand Creek, they were playing this tune on their bugler. Their buglers were playing. He ordered them to play Gary Owen. And see, you had this bloody massacre of innocent people that is being done to the tune of Gary Owen. And I made the statement, the tune Gary Owen will never ring the same for me anymore. I said, if somebody wants to listen to it, that's fine. If there's a different connotation, I said, for me, knowing that little piece of history about that piece of music has tainted it for me in my mind forever, because I know how it was misused at one point. And so I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on both sides, is there are things that we experience or things that we hear or have a bad understanding or a good understanding of, and it taints the way we think forever. For you, you and I have had some emotional conversations. There it is right there. We've had some emotional conversations about this. And for you, it's going to be very different than me, because I didn't experience that. My people didn't experience that. And I think I can see, almost without asking, I was going to ask you, what kind of memories, what kind of things does that evoke in your mind when you hear about that? But I think we can already see that.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard. I don't blame you. I don't blame anybody else listening or what's going on, but it brings a lot of emotion, and it's great that they did the movie. What's it called? God, it's got Dustin Hoffman and
the little big man.
Little big man, who's a real Lakota chief.
Chief. We spent a couple of days talking about him when I was doing that long series.
And it was great that it's one of the first times Hollywood ever tried to, besides Dances with Wolves, which was a great movie, and my parents loved it.
Which came later.
Which came later, but it was the first time, and it was kind of a movie that was to impact the Vietnam War at the time, because everybody looked Vietnamese. But yeah, it was a tough movie. It was a tough movie, but it was necessary to advance our knowledge, expand our consciousness towards being better, especially now, because you have 8 Asian Americans die in Atlanta. The guy in Minneapolis, all this stuff happening.
Clyde Bellicourt.
Yeah.
All this passed away about 10 years ago.
No, real recent in Minneapolis.
Real recent. I'm not
the
familiar
cops
with
choked him down.
You're talking about George Floyd. Yeah.
Right. So, try to create an awareness of what's happening, the hatred that's going on. And I'm not saying white men are doing this. I'm just saying hatred in general. It's black, white, red, yellow, doesn't matter. So that's where we're at.
Somebody just came in.
Yeah, it's trying to get better. Right. We're trying to get better at being human. Let's be human. Let's not focus, on the negative.
Doing the show right now.
But I keep saying it's not just Black lives that matter. it's not just white matters, white lives that matter. It's not just Asian lives that matter. What about Native American? You know,
Right.
This country is so focused on helping other people outside the country, in Africa, in Asia, and everywhere else. Look at the reservations. Really, we're the poorest people in this country. I grew up in the poorest place in the United States of America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and they're barely even helping us. So,
Right.
I'm just saying that to, just to remind people that, hey, think of the indigenous people, not in Canada, not just in Canada,
Yeah.
not just in Mexico, but here.
And Reuben, in the 20 years I've known you, I've never known you to be someone who, I'm going to just use this as a phrase, cries in your soup about race or complains about that. You're somebody who has put yourself forward to say, this is who I am now and in the now. My ancestors may have been treated this way, yours may have done it, but that's not where I live. This is where I am here and now. And what do you do? Where did I meet you? You're on the teaching circuit. We met doing living history to kids, teaching them about our history. There you are teaching a bunch of little white kids, a bunch of Indian kids, a bunch of black kids, Asian kids. Everybody was there from the school system watching you perform and you give history lessons. This is where your heart is. And so,
I have to say this, Scotty, just, I don't mean to break it up, but
no, you say what
Pierre,
you want.
Blue Frog, Pierre,
Yes,
saw my program, and I was a very young man. I was like 22, 23 at Bloomington, in this, in the area there, and doing my shows every 15 minutes. He came up to me and said, Reuben, you do a great program. I love what you do. It's really good to hear. You tell the history, the true history, the hardship, yada, yada, yada. But then he said to me, Reuben, that little kid in the first row is the next senator. That little girl is the next congresswoman. That boy in the fourth row could be the next president. And that's all he said. And I thought about that for a long time. And I realized I don't want them to hear an angry Indian.
Yeah.
I want them to hear the positivity, the things that unite us, bring us together. That's the thing. I can be, and I have been, an angry Indian, but it doesn't work. Anger doesn't help anybody. So let's be together. Let's be peaceful and go from there.
I've got a buddy of mine that I work with is standing here in the makeshift studio, folks. And this is John. And John said, I wish I could interject. Do you want to say something?
Please do.
Come here, sit down.
I will.
This is John, everybody.
Hi, everybody. I'm John.
I work with John.
Reuben.
Reuben is a
the
dear
horns.
friend of mine. He's been a dear friend of mine for 20 years. Native American, grew up in Pine Ridge Reservation.
What is your
tribe?
Yes, your tribe.
Lakota, Sitting
Dakota?
Bull, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud. We're the only people that feed the U.S. government and the Seminole. We're the only people.
That's a poor mistake.
And the poorest place in the country. You're right. What's your name again?
I'm John.
John.
Jonathan Green.
Which one interpick?
So, no, I feel what you say. I've been listening, and you feel like your people are misrepresented. You feel like your people don't have a word in this country. If I'm taking it wrong,
We're forgotten. We're the invisible people. It's either black, Latino, or Asian, or white, but they never mention Native American. And Biden is the only one, and Harris is the only one that mentioned us. Thank goodness. We don't want to be forgotten. You know, we're the original Americans. I'm an enrolled member.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead, John.
I feel like at this point in your venture, you don't want to be left out from this nation. You don't want to feel like you're people forgotten as a whole.
I'll let you go on, folks. Here, you see them.
Yeah.
So there we are. We're back.
I feel like you should step forward from that separation of the country, because I feel like personally, Native Americans aren't separated from this country, and they should not be. I don't feel like we should have that separation of Native American and and American people. I feel like we should bring us all together. America is about conglomeration of all races and all opportunities of all walks of life, right? A coexistence for people. Absolutely.
I agree.
I feel like we should stop the separation, and that doesn't mean a stop of the recognition of their culture and their people. I just feel like, why do we exclude them from our country anymore? I don't feel like this is not our, I feel like this is our country, as we're all here now and we're all in this together. We should bring each other into the involvement and bring each other into our country, because we're all people of this nation at this point. We're hundreds of years in the future of the original adaptation of this.
What do you do? Here's the question, and Reuben, I'd like you to answer this. The question, I think Maya was getting at some of this, and some of the other people that were talking here in the chat room. What do we do with, or what is your view of how the American government, the corporate America, deals with Native Americans now? Do you think it's being done fairly? I know I want to make mention, was it Kansas where they just made a ruling this last year where there were 5 tribes that the Supreme Court of Kansas, I believe it was, upheld the treaty rights from the 1800s, and basically took about $75% of, I think it's Kansas. There we go. I think we're back. Reuben, are you back? Can you hear me? Okay.
I didn't hear all of that. I'm sorry, Scotty. I didn't hear all of that.
Just saying that it was Oklahoma. Steve Clark just corrected me. There was a ruling with the Oklahoma Supreme Court that the Native American treaty rights should be upheld, meaning that the Native American tribes, there were 5 tribes. I think it was the Kiowa, the Crow, if I'm not mistaken, and 3 others that were basically now legally by treaty own a good 75% of the state of Oklahoma. And so I said, well, there's going to be legal challenges. You know, that's going to come. So what's going to happen with that? So what is your thinking right now? What should the American government be doing? Do we need to operate under?
Why are you not part of the American government?
You know, like I said to Scotty, before. I hope you can hear me, but it's the U.S. Constitution that sees us as a sovereign nation. So, in dealing with a sovereign nation, we're savages. We're not
But you're
citizens.
not.
1924, we became citizens. 1924, and 12,000 Native Americans fought for this government.
You're
In
a nation.
1978, we could practice our religion freely. And this is the land of the free, the home of the brave. Not us.
Right.
Not us.
Right.
So in saying
No,
that,
but-
to say, saying
But
that to say this,
I feel like at
the
this point,
treaty- a treaty is international law. You cannot break.
Right.
You cannot break a treaty. Yet the government has done it so many times. Every treaty they made with the Native American people, they broke. So,
Right.
you know,
And
that's
true.
why I'm 50 years old. And just last year, I started voting for this government. And it's because my Jewish girlfriend said, you don't vote, you give it to the other guy. So, but Indians don't vote. They don't believe in this government. I don't care if it's Obama, Nixon, Kennedy, whatever. We never voted because we just don't believe in this government.
Right. And I agree. And you know, I was going to say that speaking of treaty rights, and I brought this story up before, and I've told you this story. 30 years ago, I got into an argument with my former brothers-in-law, and the argument was over in Minnesota on Lake Mille Lacs, which you know of very well. I think it's the Minneconjouan Sioux are there at Lake Mille Lacs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Mille Lacs, real quick, Mille Lacs Lakes in 1776, the Sioux fought the Ojibwa and lost because they had guns, and we lost that lake, and we lost the Northland, but then we came down south. So that's the last battle between the Ojibwa and the Sioux.
That's
but
right.
Dakota.
That made that split, and you went to the plains. And
right.
my brothers-in-law were arguing about the rescinding of treaty rights on Lake Mille Lacs for the tribes, the reservation there, because they said they're taking too much fish out of the lake with their spear hunting, which is a treaty right. And they were taking their limit every day, their legal treaty limit every day, but it was hurting the tourism business up there in around Lake Mille Lacs. And the anglers, and they were all avid anglers, and they were arguing that those rights should be rescinded. Oh, there's no real Native Americans, there's no real Indians left, they said. They're all just, they're so watered down, and all of this kind of talk was being made. And I sat there at the table. This is almost 30 years ago, and I said, I disagree with you. I said, do you remember what those treaty rights said when they were written? They said that this treaty would be what? The two words in almost every treaty: in perpetuity, meaning this will never end. This will always be the way it is, until it turned out the United States government wanted something that belonged to what was left of the tribes that they were diminishing, the areas they diminished. Boy, they found out there was gold in them there hills. What happened to the treaty rights? Now I said, all you guys are doing is reenacting something that happened 100 years ago. I said, you are reenacting. There's fish in that lake, and we want it because we're anglers, and it hurts the tourism business to take it out. And so we want the treaty rights rescinded so the Indians can't fish there anymore. So, and that's the same problem all over again.
Yeah, this country's, oh boy,
Yeah,
it's got a lot of work to do.
it does.
But I love what you're doing, and I love your friend. That's great, and myself. You know, I'm doing my best. You know, a friend,
Yes.
my cousin said, "Why don't you come home and help the people?" I said, I am helping the people. I'm out here creating awareness, you know, and
Yes.
that's what it is. It's consciousness. And Scotty, you're doing a great job because you're creating the expansion of consciousness. And when you expand consciousness, you cannot unexpand it. It is
That's right.
growing all the time. So
Yes.
what you do is sacred, holy, strong. And I love that about you. And I love being on your show. I love sharing what I can with what I know, which is not very much, but it's creating that, turning the wheel, constantly turning the wheel of where we're going, what we're doing. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, red, green, yellow, orange, blue.
Right.
It's just doing that thing. So
I
that's,
agree. And
you
you know,
know.
there was another topic I wanted to get your take on. If you've got the energy for it, it's
Oh yeah.
10:21, and I was in a conversation online today about some. There were statements being made that women are now afraid of men because of all the violence that men perpetrate on women. That there are millions of men who lurk and try to do harm to women online. There's rape and so on. And my contention was, well, you can't lump all men together and say that. I understand where your fears come from, but you can't do that. You can't lump that together. And en masse, say men are all louts, men are all problems, men are all bad. That you need to be afraid of all men. And as a matter of fact, I said, I grew up and I know lots of people, lots of men who are nothing but good dads, good husbands, good fathers. They don't commit crimes against women. And there's a vast majority of them. And I said, I think you're taking the small minority and coloring the whole bit. It's like letting the bad apples spoil the whole bunch. And of course, I was right away told that my perspective was off, and I'm not listening very well, and things like that. I said, well, I do listen, and so on. And we went on. We talked about that a bit. I wanted to get your take from a Native American perspective, a perspective of your spirituality, of what you believe on the matriarchal versus the patriarchal. Um, how would you respond to that type of a question, that men are to be feared by women?
Thank you, Scotty. I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I do talk about when I do my class, and I'm doing my class tomorrow at oh gosh, 1:15 with the Upper Greenwood Library here in Upper Greenwood Lake Library. I'm going to put that out there. But long story short, America has always been a matrilineal, matriarchal society. The women were in charge. The women owned the teepee, the wigwam, the wickiup, the longhouse. And if they wanted to get rid of a man and divorce him in an Indian way, they would take all his stuff and put it outside. And then it was it. That was it.
Yes.
He was done. So women were in charge all the time. Unbeknownst to America, but so saying that to say this, women have always had the power. They didn't need to do the ceremonies, the Sundance and the Intrepid
Right.
or Sweat Lodge, or
Why did the men need to do that?
because men are weak. Men are weak. We had to go on a vision quest. We had to cry for a vision. We had to look after ourselves in that way. And so even when a Native American man went out into the wilderness, he painted his face to
Right.
fight. And okay, think of it like this: elk. An elk is beautiful, strong, hard. He's got the big horns. He breeds with many females, but he's expendable. He's only there for a reason, to make
Right.
babies and to fight and defend, and that's you and me. And then
Yes.
that's your buddy next to you.
Yep. He
But
took off with the Mexicans.
And it's the women that endure. The women outlive us. On Pine Ridge, the average age is 48.
Oh my.
Yes, women. Matthew is saying they say the sky women helped in creating man. Of course, yes, indeed.
Well,
Matt.
they create all men. Frankly, there's not
Pretty
a man
much.
alive today that doesn't have a mom.
You're gonna die before your woman. I'm gonna die before my woman. So it's just the nature of the beast. It's just
Yes.
the way it goes. And so,
Sure.
in nature, the elk, the buffalo, the bear, everything dies before the women do, the female.
Okay.
And so that's the whole purpose and the reason of the way Indians lived, that they stuck things outside and said, I don't want you, you're done, you're out of here. But women have the power, and women don't need ceremonies. It's the men.
What is the purpose of that? Is the man needs the
Sienna,
There you go.
you are the
You're
tribe.
back.
Sienna,
There you go.
you are the tribe. Just by being female. Just by being female.
What was the purpose? I'll restate the question because we blotted out for a second there. Why do men need the ceremonies? What is it about them? Is it to reconnect with who they really are supposed to be? Is it to understand themselves better, to cleanse themselves? What is the purpose of it?
Yes. It's to acknowledge their purpose. It's to acknowledge why they're there. They live a short life, and so they go on the hill for a vision quest. They go to the ceremony to suffer. What an Indian does with the Sundance and the ceremony and everything is always suffering. You got to suffer for your life. And so, you can go to church, and that's great. That's nice.
Yeah.
But in an Indian way, you've got to suffer. You've got to pierce your chest.
Oh, right. You've got that. As a matter of fact, you went through that ceremony.
My brother did, but I didn't. But
I thought you had the scars from that. I might be wrong.
I wish I did, but I never had the dream. And that's the other thing. The dream is what you got to pay conscious to. So dreaming is very, very necessary. And it's something I can do and you can do, Chia, Scotty, and your brother there. It's suffering. You got to suffer for what you want. What you want.
Why is that? Why do you think?
It's the old way. And when you give up your food, you give up your water, And on a vision quest, which I did do, you give up your water, you give up your food, you give up your sleep. You're saying, I want to reach the other side. I give these things up that keep me alive every day. But I'm giving it up so I can reach the other side. And in doing so, you reach the other side. It tells you something. Something happens in your spell, in your mind, and it happens. And then now you're wakha, you're holy, you're sacred. No one can give you that. No one. No one. Only the grandfather, Tonkashila, grandmother, can give you that. And when you die, you will walk the ghost road. And the ghost road is the Milky Way. And when you walk on the ghost road,
that story, and I was going to tell that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The ghost road. The ghost road is the Milky Way, and it goes south. It always goes south. If you ever look at the ghost road, if you get a chance, look at the ghost road. And don't call it the Milky Way anymore. Call it the Ghost Road. And it goes south, and at the end of the Ghost Road, it forks. And there's a small part of the Ghost Road. And an old woman sits there and says, Scotty, did you live a good life? And if you lie, she'll know. And say, yeah, I lived a good life. And then she'll take you to the other road, small. And then you'll go and you'll fall back down to this earth and live your life again. You have a chance. Reincarnation. You have a chance to. This is Lakota. This is a Sioux way, Indian way, Native American way.
All right.
And you'll fall back down and become something else. A worm, caterpillar, deer, buffalo, human. And then if you say yes, you go on.
Okay.
And that's nirvana, heaven, happy hunting grounds, or whatever. It's
right.
She'll direct you. She'll know. She'll know. She's an old woman that sits there at the fork. So don't lie.
I try not to. Well, that sounds like I struggle with it. I don't struggle with it. I mean, I work very hard to be a decent person, to have integrity, and to live that way. So
you're not a liar. You're not a liar. I know you. I know you.
Yeah.
But you will walk the ghost road. And I want you to remember that. And I want everybody to remember that. You will walk the ghost. It's a ghost road. The Milky Way is the ghost road.
Reuben, can you mentioned this to me? Are you still up for it? Can you play us a little tune?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I want you all to hear this.
Yeah, I got to get it. This song says, Oteche na ota chante mashiche. With much difficulty, I live with. Ota chanchiche ki hai. And I hear it every time I see you. So it's going to be in Lakota.
Okay.
And it's from a maple flute that my girlfriend gave me here in New York, which is
Right.
great. Oh, God. I can play all my music on it. Dohaya una iotie wakia cha makeshicha. And so
Why is the light on in the car? What's
oh,
going on? Why is the light on?
I just took the thing out. It's going to close.
Oh, okay.
So I made an album long ago, but I'll play it now. Can you hear me, Scotty?
I can hear you.
Okay.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, Reuben. Thank you. So, I think that is, well, there's so much we can talk about. Folks, what you're watching here is less an interview and more how Reuben and I used to, many nights in a row when he lived with us almost 20 years ago, we would sit and talk. We would sit and have a drink. We would sit and have cigars or pipes or cigarettes even. And I don't think you ever smoked cigarettes, but and we would just talk and talk and talk. That's where I would pour my heart out to him. He would listen. He would pour his out to me. I would listen. I told him back then that he was my priest. And I remember
Hardly. But I miss that. I miss talking to you. Yeah.
And I miss that. And we talk, and we get to talk on this show. This is the kind of conversations we would have. And so before you go tonight, before we call this show quits for the evening, will you leave us with your prayer that I learned from you? I call it your prayer. And some of you may have heard this before, but it's a beautiful prayer.
Chia, can you still hear me?
I can. We're still here.
Yeah, okay. Just trying to get it on deck here. So not good, not good.
Something not working over on your end? Being
Yeah.
very quiet here. So
I know. I'm still working on it.
okay.
I
This is
think I got it.
prayer. Oh, you're calling me on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Oops.
What should I do?
You're good right now. Can you you're online right now. We're all still on the show. If you lost the screen for any reason, we're all still here.
I did.
And I was going to have you close us out with your prayer.
Okay. That's what I want.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to close this and try again.
All
Or
right.
you can call me.
We saw the sign language. And
You
so
did.
yes. So we're being quiet because it's being like sacred space.
I'm trying to get there.
Everybody's saying they can see you, they can hear you. So
I can't see anybody.
okay. It's
Okay, I'm blowing it up.
all right.
Trying again.
All right. Can you recite that for us so people can hear the words of the prayer?
You can also find it on the Google where this says, if you Google Indian's prayer, it's
Okay.
by White Cloud. White
Okay.
Cloud, who is a Sioux chief, my tribe. White Cloud what he said. I don't know what the time frame is, but he said it. O great mystery, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I am small and weak. One of your many children am I. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunrise. Make my hands respect the many things you have made, and make my ears sharp to hear my voice, and make me wise. Make me sharp and make me wise, so that I may know the many things you've hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come before you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades, I may be among you again.
It's beautiful.
That's your prayer, Scotty.
I have always remembered that. I remember that from 20 years ago, and I love hearing you recite it and see you do the sign language to it. So, Reuben, I want to thank you for being here tonight. We had to track you down for a couple of weeks to get you on here. We tried to do it once before and it didn't work, but I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for spending almost 2 hours with us. Do you remember that? Well, you and I were really almost 2 hours and 45 minutes. You and I have been talking. So, and you just came on about an hour and 45 minutes ago. So, thank you for being here. There's so much to learn. This is something that I have always thought of. You know,
I don't want to stop talking.
what's that?
I don't want
Yeah,
to stop talking.
I don't either. Ian Punnett always said at the close of his radio show that it is said that each one of us influences up to 1,000 people during our lifetimes. Who will you influence today? And how will you be influential today? And so for me, you're always an influence to me. And I appreciate you. I love you with all my heart, brother. And I appreciate the fact that you would take your time and be here with us.
Always, always.
All right,
do it
Misu.
again.
Let's do it again. Misu, you have a good night, and I will talk to you very soon.
Cheer. I love you.
Love you too, Misu. Good night. All right, folks. There he was. That's Reuben FastHorse. Those of you who didn't know him, he's my friend, my brother. He's the one adopting me into his tribe, the Lakota, and the one who has renamed me, given me my Lakota name. We have a long history together. And there was a time, I may have shared this with you, there was a time where Reuben disappeared for a long time. He went through some deep anguish and heartaches and related to his ex-wife and his children. And he fell very silent for a number of years. And I did everything I could to find him. And he had gone back to the reservation, and I had called some people with the family name, and they said they kind of knew her. Not very trusting of me. And eventually we caught up together and reconnected. It's about 6 or 7 years ago now. And so it's so wonderful to have him here tonight to talk about his life or his heritage, to talk about his history. And I hope that all of you enjoyed the show here tonight. We'll have Reuben back again and probably talk about some other things. But I want to thank you all for being here, all giving me your time. I appreciate it. So, folks, let's sign off. We've gone almost 2 hours tonight, which is easy to do when you like to talk. It's sometimes hard to do when you like to talk, but you're tired. And so it's getting late for most of you. And I want to thank you for all of you who stuck with the show tonight and enjoyed it, all of your input. I'm sorry for those who may have had some difficulty here tonight. Difficulty with the issues. I invite you to feel welcome here, to share your views, maybe even get a hold of me, and we can talk, and maybe even have you on the show to present views. I never mean for this show or this chat room to be something that drives people away. If you disagree with what's being said, that's okay, but you don't have to leave. So, having said that, everybody, have a happy Friday night. Have a great weekend. And I will see you all on Sunday morning right here. And guess what? Rainey will be here with me. I don't know if she'll be here right at 9 o'clock, but she'll be here on Sunday. So thank you for being here. You guys have a good night. Remember, live long and prosper. See you later.